why we have to talk about this. You might be like, but Yasmin, why should we talk about something that happened decades ago? What does that have to do with today? I will say to you, based on tons of research, it has everything to do with today. And the reason is this: we as human beings, we have a nervous system which is meant to keep us safe. It has one job, and that is to keep you safe. We have a brain, and in our brain, there is what is called unconscious programming. Now, what is unconscious programming? Well, it's kind of like learning a language. So each of you grew up in a home where you learned a language, right? Yes? Now, what language did you learn growing up? Well, you learned the language that was spoken around you, am I right? So you're not going to learn Chinese in a house where they speak Urdu. You're not going to learn English in a house where they speak Spanish, right? You will learn the language that is spoken around you. And when did you learn language? Well, you learned it in the first few years of your life, didn't you? You also learned a sort of emotional language. You learned how the world works. You learned how to respond in times of stress. You learned whether or not it's safe to express yourself. You learned here's what you do when someone is upset with you. Here's what you do when someone has hurt you. Here's what you also learned a type of language that is emotional. It created a blueprint. And see, that blueprint is what we are still working off of as adults. And that blueprint, that programming happened in the first 4, 5, 6 years of our life on this earth. In fact, they say that the brain waves, so one thing you'll learn about neuroscience is that we have different brain waves. So you have different brain waves when you're awake and you're conscious. You have different brain waves when you're asleep. At different stages of sleep, you have different brain waves. And then you have different brain waves when you're in a very suggestive state, for example, in hypnosis. Theta brain waves are a type of brain wave that you would put a person into if you were going to hypnotize them for brainwashing, basically. Now, what's interesting is that when we are falling asleep, and just as we are waking up, our brain goes into theta brainwaves. This is why, actually, if you want to reprogram your brain, this is the time to do it, because this is when you're most open to suggestion. If you want to program safety into your nervous system, this is a good time to do that because of the type of brainwaves. But what's very interesting is this, and I would say this is both amazing and also very scary. The first about 7 years of our life are basically theta brainwaves. When I heard that, it actually brought me to tears. Because what does that mean? It means that the parent has this incredible power to program what will become this child's programming for the rest of their life, till they do the hard work to reprogram. But most people recognize that. They don't even recognize that they're working off of unconscious programming. The vast majority of our behavior is not rational. There's going to be people pushing back on that. What are you talking about, Yasmin? I am so rational, right? I'm all rational. I'm just a big ball of rationality. I appreciate that you think that. But the truth is, if you study neuroscience, we are actually working off, the vast majority of our behavior is actually not rational via the prefrontal cortex, but most of it is actually working off of unconscious programming. And if you want to talk about the neuroscience of this, I mentioned to you that the nervous system has one job, and that is to keep you safe. So in childhood, what happened is, whatever your environment was, your nervous system learned to keep you safe in that environment, whatever it was. And the human being, because Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala gave us this amazing brain and this amazing ability to survive, what happens is no matter what environment you put a child in, they will learn mechanisms to survive. Now, I don't say that this means that it's healthy. They will learn mechanisms to survive. You put them in a jungle, you got the Jungle Book. You put them in a home where there is a volatile, a parent who can easily be triggered. You put them in a minefield where, you know a minefield? What's a minefield? A minefield is where you don't really know where the explosion will happen, and so you have to tread very carefully. If you put a child in that environment, they will develop survival skills to survive that environment. What's an example of that? Well, if you grow up in a chaotic or unpredictable type of environment with a volatile caregiver, you will learn, I better not upset anyone. You will learn, I better stay quiet. I better suppress my needs. I better say what's going to keep people happy. You learn that it is unsafe for people to be unhappy. And so what you learned is, in order to stay safe, I have to keep everyone around me happy. Do you know what that's called in adulthood? People-pleasing. This is where people-pleasing comes from. Have you ever met a person who can never admit when they're wrong? No judgment. No, you don't have to point. Maybe it's yourself. Maybe it's others. Do you know where that came from? That came from a childhood where it wasn't safe to make a mistake. In other words, making a mistake meant very severe consequence. It meant extreme rejection. It meant shame. It meant punishment. It meant the withholding of love. See, when we talk about unconditional love, I mentioned that this is one of the fundamental needs of a human being, of a child. See, most of us have not experienced unconditional love. Most of us have experienced what is called conditional love. What does that look like? Well, as long as you're perfect, as long as you don't make a mistake, as long as you don't upset me, as long as you do exactly as you're told, as long as you obey like a robot, then I will show you love. As long as you perform, as long as you achieve, as long as you keep bringing in the grades or bringing in the money, as long as, and there's a whole list. These are called conditions. And only so long as you follow these conditions, I will show you love. Look, I'm not talking about boundaries. I am talking about withholding love. I am talking about what happens when a child makes a mistake. What happens when a child doesn't perform? What happens when a child disagrees with you? What happens when a child doesn't do exactly as you command? For many of us, that is when love was taken away. Love was withheld. That's when a lot of people saw the silent treatment. Silent treatment is actually extremely harmful. And so what happens is, now let's go back to the person who can't admit when they make a mistake. The reason they can't admit when they make a mistake is because their nervous system literally learned, it wired to learn the following lesson. Making a mistake is not safe. Making a mistake will get you rejected, will get you shamed, people will stop loving you, people will withhold, so I can never admit to making a mistake. And so that individual, as an adult, will find every way in God's green earth to avoid admitting that they made a mistake. And that will show up as maybe saying, actually, you're just too sensitive, or you're just imagining it, or it's all in your head, or you're always making trouble, or you're always starting a fight, or you're always so dramatic. The problem here is that this is touching something called shame. Now, I want to talk about shame because we cannot change our behavior, and we cannot heal, and we cannot break intergenerational trauma cycles until we address and heal shame. Now, what is shame? So shame goes like this. And I want to differentiate between accountability, healthy accountability, and healthy remorse when we make a mistake versus toxic shame. Here is the difference. Healthy accountability says, I did something bad. Everyone with me? I did something bad, but I can fix it. Got it? I did something bad, but I can fix it. Shame says, I am bad. So how can I fix it? Here is the problem. Many of us, and I would dare say most of us, grew up with toxic shame. We grow up in homes, in households, in environments, in communities, where when someone makes a mistake, we immediately say it's because they are bad. Maybe your child lies. What do we say to the child who lies? You're a liar. We didn't say, you lied and lying is bad and here's how you stop and here's how you fix it and let's choose better next time. No, we assign an identity around the mistake. That is shame. You are telling the child that it's not the behavior that's bad. It's them that's bad because they're a liar. When a child acts out, what do we say? We say, you're a bad boy. You're a bad girl. You are naughty. I hate that word because what are we doing? We are assigning an identity. We are telling that child that any mistake you make, it's because there's something wrong with you intrinsically. That is toxic shame. And toxic shame is actually the root cause of all of these dysfunctions. You would be amazed when you study something like narcissism. You would be amazed that the root of narcissism is an incredible amount of toxic shame. People think that narcissists are just so confident. They just have big egos, they're so full of themselves. No, they are not. In fact, they are deeply insecure because they have a deep, immense amount of toxic shame. They actually deep down think that they are not good enough. And that is why they need to feel superior. That is why they need to put others down to feel bigger. And so what you are dealing with is not necessarily a big ego. What you're dealing with is a very fragile ego. An ego that is full of shame because deep down they think they're not good enough. And where does that come from?